Hello everybody and welcome to our Facebook Live session. We're coming to you today from wintry and chilly Boston, Massachusetts, but we're hoping you're all joining from around the USA and even around the world in some cases, so welcome. Now, my name is Dr. Danielle. I'm the veterinarian with Wellness, and I'm here today to talk to you about all the things related to pets and their pet food. It's a new year, we're starting off, and it's also that great time where we can reevaluate what we're not only feeding for ourselves, but also our fur family. So I'd love to take you through proper feeding techniques, how we can actually feed them, and what also about some of those tricky pets when you have those unusual questions or just not sure. So make sure you'll join in with us today. If you have a question, type it onto the team. We've got Carly and Shonda here. They're capturing all your questions and they're going to repeat them to myself. So we will make sure we get them answered, and if we don't get you covered here today, we'll make sure we do it afterwards. Now, the next best thing is you can also go in the draw to win one of our wellness packs. And this will include great nutritious options from Wellness Core for your dog, including food, toppers, treats and wet food, and also wellness from your cat with great tasty solutions for them as well. So today we're going to start off with looking at some of those proper food techniques, and one of the questions I always get asked is how much should you be feeding your pet and how often? You know, this is a question that I think many pet owners look at because there's always those adorable puppy eyes when they're looking at you and you know they're begging for more, but should you cave? Should you give into it? The first thing I always say is if you're talking about a dog, you know, the main things to look at is how active are they, what age are they, and what size. So this is really important because today, you know, we're busy. We're often out at work or, you know, doing things out and about the house, and the pet may be at home. They may not be getting as much exercise as we ideally would hope to have. And we need to make sure that we're not overfeeding them in these situations, because in those cases it could lead to slightly of those, you know, winter extra kilos or extra pounds building on, so that then it's going to lead to some health problems. So what I always recommend is you first and foremost need to determine what size your dog is. So if it's a small breed, look towards a small breed formula. If it's a large breed, naturally go towards a large breed formula. The age is also really important. So most animals are a puppy until they're 1 year of age. They then become a senior around 7 years of age. And I know a lot of people will often think, hang on, he doesn't look like a senior, but the reality is there's changes going on the inside. So pick the right life stage and lifestyle format for your dog. So we've got Tilly here in the office, in the studio with us today. She's roaming around. You might see her on camera. Here she comes in, but it's a bit hard. But she's a Border Collie mix who is a 2-year-old dog and a medium breed. So for her, I'd be looking at a regular medium breed formula, and that's perfect. For the feeding amounts, I would be recommending here you grab a bag and turn them over. Every bag is the perfect tool, and the reality is a lot of pet parents will say, you know, I feed a cup in the morning, a cup at night. But the most important thing is to actually check that guaranteed analysis and check that feeding amount so that you can make sure that you're feeding to that body condition for the weight of the dog. So for Tilly here, for example, she would be having 2 cups a day. And what you would recommend then you do is you split that to a cup in the morning and a cup at night. And that makes it nice and easy because that's often when you're having breakfast or you're having dinner. So again, you don't get those puppy dog eyes in between. Now, the other question I always get is what about cats? Cats are so fussy, so particular. They'll often tell us what they like to eat more so than we can dictate to them what might be a good choice. So with cats, it's a couple different options. Most cats these days are eating a combination of wet and dry. And that's actually a really good thing because whilst the dry gives them all the high protein, the great levels of fat and great digestive health, the wet is also the perfect option for making sure that they're getting sufficient hydration. So that's key for not only making sure they drink, which they often don't enjoy to do some cases, but also really important for their urinary tract health. So with cats, what I always say is, you know, you can often leave their dry food out. It's actually good for them to graze their dry food over the day because in this case, it helps keep their urinary tract health also healthy in that sense as well. But if you're going to give them wet food, my big takeaway here is that you need to ensure they eat it within about a 10-15 minute period. Because otherwise what you might start to notice is that that food starts to spoil. So if they have their wet food, you want that to be more of a meal. So if they're not going to eat the whole amount, just reduce how much you're going to give them, or pick a smaller size package, and then that way you can give them to them in a single serve. Then their dry food, you can pop that in a bowl and leave it out. Now, to be really clear, when I say pop that in a bowl, what I don't want to see is people just filling that bowl up and whatever the cat eats in the day is sufficient. We still need to make sure we measure out how much they eat over the day. So we want to keep our cats trim. They're majority indoors these days, so they're truly not getting the activity that they need. So we need to make sure we're not overfeeding them. So measure out the dry food. If you're adding in a topper or you're adding in a wet, don't forget when you add that in, you also need to reduce the amount of dry food you're giving them. So if, for example, your original amount was a cup of wet, you might need to come down to almost half, or should I say a cup of dry. You might need to come down to half a cup of dry and then add in that wet food. So use the feeding guidelines. They're the best tool. And that's especially the case if you're swapping between brands, because the caloric density of those foods is often really different. So this way you can make sure you're feeding the right calories for every single product. Now, I think there's a question that's come in on this one. So, Carly, what have we got?
Sure. So our first question, what is the best food to help a 3-year-old healer lose weight? And that's from Ginger.
Yes. So a 3-year-old healer, my bet is he's highly active. So you're probably out and about getting the exercise, which is first and foremost something that we want to do. The second one when it comes to food is we need to make sure that they're almost eating under their daily caloric requirements. So the key thing here I'd recommend is I'd be looking for a reduced fat formula. Now, the other thing is it's no different to if we go on a diet. You know, we want to lose weight, but we also want to tone up. We want to be looking like we're at the gym, we've got our muscles, we're feeling fantastic, and it's the same for our dogs. You know, 40% of their total weight is muscle, so it's a huge part of their nutrition. So what I would recommend in this case is a product like Wellness Core. So I don't have the reduced fat here one, but you'll see it on your local pet specialty store or even on your online provider, and they will show you that diet. Now, it's great because it's got probably one of the lowest fat levels in our diet, and it's that fat which really reduces the calories, but it's also got moderate fibre levels, so it's not high or anything like that, which leads to palatability concerns or also increased stool volume. And best of all, it's really rich in meat. And it's that richness in meat that then is going to lead to that great lean muscle. So that would be my recommendation. You'll lose the body fat, you'll build the lean muscle, get that nice waist back, and build, you know, to a healthy well-being over the time. But it's great that you're starting the new year and getting him trim and fit.
Great, thank you. And then we have another question coming in from Sarah. What food and treats would you suggest for senior dogs? Sarah has a 13-year-old lab, and she's currently on a grain-free diet.
Perfect. So as a 13-year-old lab, you'll most definitely have a senior dog, Sarah. So Labradors usually start becoming a senior from 6 years of age. And what we see as they get older is they often start to slow down. You know, people will say he has trouble going up the stairs or in and out of the car. They're the key areas. So what I would suggest here is first and foremost, and also being a Labrador, we know what they're like when they see anything related to food, is you need to make sure he stays nice and trim. If he's carrying too much weight, that will actually lead to pressures on his hips and his joints and aches and pains. So keep him trim. The second thing I would look to doing is again feed a senior formula. Now, you often wonder what's the difference with a senior to an adult diet. And the main thing here is that what you're going to see is that it's got increased nutrients in regards to glucosamine, chondroitin sulfate, also more protein, also extra nutrition in there for their digestive health. That keeps them nice and healthy. If I was adding in a treat to that situation, one of the ones I think is one of the best out there is the 100% treats. So these are literally just 100% meat. And being that senior dog, the good thing here is that you're not going to be adding in significantly extra calories or too much salt with some of the other products, for example, you might get in the grocery aisle. This is just meat. They're nice and small, so you're not adding in too much extra, and it'll make sure that the dog's therefore going to look nice and trim as well. So it's the perfect combination. Keep them trim and get them on a senior diet as well. Any other questions?
So we have one more question
Sure.
on this topic that we
Tilly.
can address.
Yeah.
So Susie is referring to her cat. Her cat is overweight, and she says it's hard to reduce her food because she will not leave me alone. She's in the kitchen. What would be best to feed her that will fill her up and that can still give her, a little bit more food without that weight gain?
Absolutely. And this is a common question. I mentioned before that our cats now are almost 90% indoors. I think the latest statistics showed that cats are now, in fact, on average, 59% of them are overweight or obese. So you're definitely not alone. Now, when you're feeding a cat, so there's a couple of different ways you can feed them to make them feel full and also keep them eating for longer so that mentally they feel like they're not just had a small amount and, meowing every second of the day of feed me, feed me. So here what I recommend is a couple of things. Firstly, wet food, you'd be surprised, sometimes helps fill them up a bit more. So that could be an option to help them eat a larger volume but without the calories included. So I always look at that for our overweight pets. The other one is most definitely select a fat reduced or weight loss formula. They are just by state naturally going to have less calories, and that's what you need. We need to get their activity up, we need to make them feel full, but we must make sure they're eating less than what their daily need is so they lose weight. And then the other thing is try and get them moving. I know it's impossible, it's a cat, and the idea of taking them for a walk is something where none of us are going to do. But even just moving their bowl around or creating, putting their food in sometimes little treat balls or, moving them food up to a ladder where they've got to climb up all different areas on their pole to actually get the food. Those little things or even laser pointers can help over time get them moving, get them burning. But try them out, see how you go. The big tip I've got is when we talk weight loss, which has been a real common question even just so far, is that you aim for just 1 to 2% body weight loss a week. So if you've got a cat that's 10 pounds, that's not going to be a huge amount. So it's going to take a lot of time. So my big recommendation is stick with it, keep going, assume it might be a case right through that you're having your cat on a weight loss diet right through to the summer, but stick with it. You'll get there and your cat's health will greatly thank you for it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic, which is all around variety. And I think this is a really great topic because I'm sure you've all experienced it when you do go into a pet food store and you just stand there and go, my goodness, where do I start? Should I be feeding wet food, dry food, a salmon formula, a lamb formula, a chicken formula? What's the recommendation? What's best for them? Now, the main thing I'd sort of be looking at is we want to keep our pets enjoying what they eat. We want to make sure it's the healthiest food they can eat. But we also want to make sure that we don't get in a situation where they are really stuck and they may not eat any foods at all. So that's why premium natural companies are really coming out with a plethora almost of great choice and variety so that you can find the perfect recipes for dogs and cats. So the main ones I sort of start is, when I look at this, I incorporate variety by a couple different ways. And this is a case of rotational feeding almost, or adding it in. And you can do that by different ways. First of all, when it comes to just plain dry kibble, you can look at different flavours. So the one I've got here is wild game, but there's also an ocean formula, there's also a chicken formula. And the great thing about this is you can still feed, the same kibble because you like the convenience, your dog loves it, it's, perfect for your family, but you can add the rotational variety by saying, Tilly's in here with me, she's like, where is these foods treats gone? You can add that in by changing the protein source. Now, the only key thing here to make sure is that your dog doesn't have a food allergy, but again, that's a very small amount of the population of the dogs. So the great thing too, when you rotate within one brand, is that you're going to have the same fat levels and the same fibre levels. It's simply a change of the protein. So this makes it much easier to swap between the products versus, say, buying one brand one week, another brand another week, and then a different one the one after. In that case, you're doing a different manufacturing facility, you're doing a different formula, different inbound ingredients, and different fibre and fat levels. And that's when you can start to get digestive upsets. You've probably done it yourself if you've ever had to change your pet's food suddenly. And you'll notice 2 to 3 days afterwards, that period, they've often had loose stools or there's been a bit of a problem. So that's often what happens with a hard transition. By choosing variety within one brand and one particular product, you can actually minimise that. So that's a great one. The other thing I talk about different wet foods, or should I say variety, is you can add it in the form of toppers. So, we all like to see that rush to the bowl, that enthusiasm, but we may not be wanting to feed, a high proportion of wet food, or you may just think, that's not for us. So what I encourage in these cases is you can add on top of their kibble different types of wet food. So here are just two. We've got a plethora of products for the smaller breeds. So these are fantastic. They're called mini meals, for example, which is a simple pouch. You squeeze it out, so not much mess. And that's a fantastic complete and balanced meal for those smaller breeds. Then when it comes to our big guys, we've also then got all different flavours of wet food. So again, your dog may only prefer chicken kibble, but here you can then add in some salmon topper or some turkey topper. So again, you've got the variety going in, and that's really key too, because different proteins deliver different amino acid profiles. It's all those nutrition. So you're adding in them naturally into their diet and keeping that variety in there. And then the last one to add variety, and this is something I just think is really amazing and the dogs go nuts for them, is we have things like this which are called bowl boosters. And they're literally, as the name describes, you've got your standard bowl of food, and we firmly believe at Core that there is no more boring bowls when it comes to how we feed our pets. So here what you can do is you can get pure meat chunks, literally freeze-dried. So it's as close to raw as you can get, and but with all the safety, and what you do is you just pop them in on top. So you can either pop them on so they're in a pile, or you can mix them in with their kibble. And that's again another way of adding in that variety so that you can give either pure, what's this one? This one's turkey. We've got all different flavours to make that food, lick clean that bowl, and it's exactly what the dogs love. So it's another great one that I'd look to. If you haven't got the time to actually add the variety, the other one is you can do a product that is a combination of kibble and plus raw freeze-dried inclusion. So there's loads, and it's really up to you what your dog loves. They'll tell you pretty quick what's their favourite. And the great thing is, we don't eat the same food every day. So it's a great way also of giving that excitement to meal times for them as well. Okay, what about cats? Oh, get a question.
Sure. So we have a question coming in from quite a few participants asking about grain-free diets and their safety. So can we talk a little bit about that, and we'll have you repeat that question to the audience as well.
Awesome. So the question that's come in, and I think Carly mentioned there's been multiple pet owners asking about this one, is they've all heard lots about grain-free of late and how there are some concerns, and there was a case of several dogs reporting to have what's called DCM, which is called in expanded form dilated cardiomyopathy, which is basically a heart condition. Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And there's also a lot of people going, well, does that mean I should never feed grain-free now? Or which brands are okay, which brands are not? So it's a great question. I'm really glad you all asked it. The key takeaway here is the main thing is they have not said in any way, shape or form that all grain-frees are bad. What they've said through the studies is that through research, they've found that when companies include certain ingredients at levels that might be excessively high, that it's led to a deficiency in taurine either being produced, absorbed, or actually being utilised by the pet. And in this case, it's dogs. So there's still lots of research going on. There's still lots of unknown ways as to how it's interacting. But this is something we at Wellness are really, really passionate about because we've known about this for years. We've been crafting grain-free or even natural pet food for over 100 years, and that was for us long before it was trendy, long before anyone else was doing it. And we've seen through the research that, we've always stayed cutting edge on the science to make sure it delivers the very best nutrition that you can get. So when it comes to our food, we include grain-free diets, and yes, we include some diets with peas or legumes that might have been on those lists. But to be really clear, we have not in any way, shape or form had our brands involved in this issue. So it has not impacted us. And the reason it doesn't is because since 2004, we've been adding in supplementary taurine to every single one of our diets because we knew things like this could happen. The other thing is we don't have those ingredients at excessively high levels or low quality proteins, and there's some of the precursors as to why it can happen. So for us, we have the very best levels of meat protein. It's our key hero. We're protein rich, and when you add that much meat, you get natural amounts of taurine. We then make sure we include the very best quality of not only meat but also carbohydrates, and we balance the amounts we use. And then lastly, as the final ability to say we trust our products to deliver the very best health and well-being, we add in supplementary taurine, and we've also done long-term AFCO maintenance studies to make sure our products are safe. And then last but not least, we actually measure the taurine in every single one of our products to prove it's safe and efficient. The other one to mention, we've also done another study in light of all these issues and shown that over a period of time, our blood levels of taurine actually also stay stable over that period. So hand on heart, our products are not involved. grain-free, you don't need to avoid them. The most important thing is pick a brand that's great quality, a product you trust, and in that case I can absolutely tell you Wellness is the perfect grain-free.
Great, thank you. And so then moving back into cats, we
Yes.
wanted to pick up on that topic and talk a little bit about variety with cats.
Cats. These guys are fun, aren't they? And you know, when we talk variety, I always love talking to cat owners. They will often use the words, oh, my cat loves your food, but he will only eat, and then they say, you know, the 4 diets he will eat. Or if he's a great one who eats all different kinds of things, they're like, I don't want to say anything because at the moment he eats it all. We're almost held hostage by these cats. So what I recommend here is when you first get a kitten, this is the time you need to start them on the very best nutrition. When you start them on a product like Wellness, you've got great options that are kitten, but also kitten dry and kitten wet. And you can start exposing them to the different formats and flavours. That's really key, and it also prevents them down the path, starting on maybe a grocery food instead, and then you're stuck there, but yet you know it's not the best for them. So here what I always recommend, start them from a kitten. But then you want to get the variety in, so you can keep mixing it up. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm at the shops buying food for my cat, I've often got a basket and I'm literally picking all different foods for her so that she can have the different varieties, and she loves it. So, you know, we'll have lobster and shrimp in the morning and then she'll have her chicken pate at night. So we mix it up. They're also very fussy on texture. So when I'm at the shelf, for example, you'll know whether they only like a pate or a flaked. The great thing here, and especially with Wellness, is that we're a company especially in the pet specialty world, so you know your pet stores out and about, not the grocery level, but here we have the largest portfolio of all wet cat food. So this is a great one of saying, you know, when customers come to me and they go, oh, my cat will only eat, you know, a fish pate, I can turn around and actually say then, don't worry, we have the perfect diet for you. So pick a diet, great quality, mix and match the variety. The variety can be not only flavours when it comes to wet, the variety can also be textures. So they're the key ones. And as I said, feed them, but make sure you adjust the dry and then try to keep to just 2 main meals. And if you're leaving anything out in the middle of the day, make sure that's the dry. So any other questions that come in? Well, if anyone else has joined, don't forget to ask your questions. We have a Wellness pet food giveaway also up for grabs, which will include great products from Core for both your dog and cat. So get asking. Carly, what have we got?
Great. So we have a question that's come in from Becky.
Yep.
And this is specific to cat food toppers. She
Okay.
wants to know what types of toppers Wellness has for cat's dry food, and if you could read that question.
Sure can. So we wanted to know what was the types of toppers available for cats. Here, cats, again, they're fussy, they're finicky. So obviously we've got our key base diet for dry, which is we come both in Wellness Core, Wellness Complete Health, Wellness Complete Health Grain-Free. We've also, for treats, we've got things like our Kittles. The cats go nuts for these. So if you're ever looking for just a simple treat, these are perfect. When it comes to toppers, the main thing I'd be looking at for cats is you can use your wet food. So as I mentioned, we've got a huge variety of wet food choices. You name the flavour, you name the texture you want, we guarantee we'll find you a great solution. I would use that. You can put a small bit on top. The other one that's great, and this is one that's just new to the market, if you're ever looking for a topper, and this one's included in the bag, so it's not one you top, but it's one that comes topped, in some way of saying it, is our Core Raw Rev. So we tested this one for palatability with customers, and what we found was it was a 98% acceptance of cats who just love this formula. Now, if you think of the amount of times your cat's turned its nose up at a diet, 98% of cats trying it loved it is a fantastic result, something we're really excited about. So have a fussy cat looking for variety, Core Raw Rev would be one for cats that I would definitely give a test to, and you will find that works great for that variety and excitement as well. Otherwise, I'd be looking at toppers in regards to wet food. Sound good?
Excellent.
Yeah. Any other questions?
We're going to move on to portion control.
Perfect. Portion control. Yes, yes, yes. I may have mentioned before, we have a incidence at the moment that 56% of our dogs and 59% of our cats are overweight or obese. So they're getting larger, it's increasing every single year. Now, it's not that there's some systemic growth in their, problems of their health. The reality is we're feeding them too much. So we as pet owners need to make sure we are not giving them too much. We love them to death. Food is love. We get home from a busy day and we want to give them a treat, but we need to make sure if we're giving them a treat, we're also reducing their food. So I always thoroughly recommend here, start a routine. You know, if you're giving them something, make sure they've got their food, they know what time it is, so that way you're also not being woken up at 4 a.m. for I'm hungry now. You want to make sure you measure. So I mentioned in the beginning, when you get a packet of food or any product, turn it over. Read that feeding guideline. So if it says give a cup of food and you're adding in other things, don't forget you've got to reduce that cup of food. So always assess that and then find yourself an accurate measuring cup, or even better, you know, a scales that can weigh their food. That's probably the most accurate, but you need to then look at obviously in the grams element. That's where you can probably find the easiest conversion. So measure it, assess how much you need to give. If you want to treat them from just their kibble, that's probably the easiest one, because then you can just take out some of those kibbles and pop it in a bowl and give them to them over the day. If, however, you want to add in some great tasty options, so here the recommendation is that when you give treats, they should only be around that 10 to 15%. But by the same token, you then need to reduce your overall feeding amount by 10 to 15%. So it's always got to be in a balance. It's got to make sure you're measuring it, and you want to make sure that when you give them something, it's always the very best nutrition that you can get. You know, we often think, oh, they need to have lots of food, they need to eat large amounts. But I always say a nice fun fact is, you know, most dogs' size of a stomach is, especially in the smaller guys, it's like a tennis ball or smaller. You know, when they're a kitten or a puppy, it's the size of a golf ball. We don't need to feed them these huge volumes of food, because the other thing is that when we're doing that, it's going to also be coming out the backyard for you to pick up. So here are the big things: pick great quality nutrition, make sure you're feeding concentrated amounts. It'll fill them up even though it looks smaller amounts, but it's going to be the best nutrition for them. Isn't that right, Tilly? So always recommend from those standpoints as well. Okay, the other one, exercise. Dogs and cats need exercise, and it is one of those ones that's hard. So if you can get them out and about, I know at the moment, especially up here in Massachusetts, it is cold outside. Where I come from at the moment, down where I grew up in Sydney, that's a lot warmer climate. So we're often out and about, but as much walking and exercise you can give your dogs, always a great one. And that'll also help make sure that if they get that extra treat or two, which hands on heart, we've probably all done, you're going to help make sure that they don't get heavier over the winter as well. Okay. So another one for treats. We've talked about it a lot. So when you're giving treats, the main thing I always recommend is, yeah, we love to do it, but in the case of some, you can rip them up and make them smaller for starters. So here on my desk, I've got for Tilly, who keeps coming past, you know, some of our great treats which come in these pure rewards. You can also make them smaller as well, so that way they can last longer. So you can give the rewards, they don't have to be as big. I'd always look for low calorie. As I mentioned, fat is the key thing that naturally adds more calories. So one of the best treats I always find is these 100% meat, because they're lean meat. So when you're giving a treat, then they're not, oh, Tilly can hear the paper wrapping here. So she's popping back in, but this is the main one I'd say. So pick a great quality one, make sure it's got nutrition in there. Protein's probably the gold standard. You want to make sure that it's not too high in salt as well. Break them up, make sure that, you know, you've got them ready should a guest pop in and you want to, you know, make sure that dog's not jumping all over your guests or they want to give treats. You've got to be able to also encourage the dog for some positive behaviour. So treating, great option. We all love to do it. I think research showed 97% of us all treat our dogs, but make sure it's a healthy snack, not an indulgence. And as we all know, indulgences are good every now and then, but healthy snacking is what will keep us healthy overall. So welcome to everybody who's still joining in. My name is Dr. Danielle. I am a veterinarian with Wellness and coming to you today from chilly Boston in Massachusetts. So do we have any more questions, Carly?
Yes, we have a question coming in from Colleen, and Colleen wants to know if you have any tips on feeding a stressed rescue dog who's just being welcomed into the house.
Oh, perfect. First of all, well done. Thank you for adopting a wonderful little soul. I'm sure they will be a perfect introduction into your home and you're going to have a great times ahead. It's really exciting, gives me the tingles. So here what I would always recommend is, it's a nerve-wracking time for both the dog and for you guys adjusting. So what I would always encourage is keep the house, first of all, nice and calm over the next few days. Let them adjust, let them slowly work their way around and get used to their new life. Now, when you first get them, it might be a bit of a transition time where you may have some food that they've come with, or it may be a case of hard transitioning onto new diet because they simply didn't come with any food and you don't know maybe what they were fed before. So what I always encourage is, first and foremost, just feed them smaller amounts, let them gradually introduce. That way they're not going to get a large volume of something they've never eaten before. Try and pick something that is similar if you know what they were eating. So again, you want to pick great quality nutrition. Find out what type of food they were eating before. So if they have only eaten, for example, wet food, if you suddenly put down dry food, that might be a bit hard. So if it was me, what I would do, I would pick a diet like a Wellness Core or a Wellness Complete Health Grain-Free. That's a great foundation nutrition. The interesting thing too is you'll also start to notice some hopeful improvements. So I always say when you move on to a great quality diet, especially if they've come from a stressful shelter situation, within about 2 to 4 days, you'll suddenly notice that because they're on better nutrition, more stays inside them, less comes out the back end. So their stool will get smaller and firmer. That's kind of the first aha moment that I like to talk about, where they start to have the benefits of premium nutrition. The next one you'll start to see by sticking with a great quality is that within 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even sometimes 6 to 8 weeks, especially now over winter, you'll notice their coat really start to shine more and their lean muscles will really start to grow, or not grow, but it'll be more dominant. So these are the signs that you've really moved on to a great nutrition. But back to where we started, I'd start with a kibble product. I'd make sure that if you're a bit fussy on their food, you've got some wet food on hand to mix in. If you want to move them eventually to wet, or should I say just to dry food, you can just put a small amount of wet food in and kind of mix it up with their kibble and then gradually reduce it over the time. But the main thing is it's going to be a nervous time for everyone. So lots of love, lots of cuddles, feed the best quality nutrition and get them out and about as well. So congratulations and enjoy the next few weeks.
Thank you. Becky has a question. At what age would you suggest switching to a senior dog food for a medium or large size dog?
Perfect. So the question was, when do I switch to a senior diet for a medium or a large breed? So seniors will become a senior way before we think of them as a senior. Often with your dogs, you're thinking they're a senior when they're in their mid-teens. But in fact, the signs of ageing internally or even externally start to occur from as young as 7 years of age for a medium breed and 6 years of age for a large breed. So it may feel like, hang on, we know we don't even want to be thinking of our pet as a senior, but think of them as they're probably a 50 or 60-year-old in human years. You don't want to be feeding that 50 or 60-year-old the same as you were eating when you were 20. So here you need to start feeding a different diet that is still rich in protein to help them keep that muscle strength, low in fat to make sure they don't put on extra weight to give them the joint pain, rich in joint nutrients, so things like glucosamine, chondroitin sulfate and even omega-3s for inflammation, and also rich in digestive health features, because often as you get older they might have more digestive health concerns or loose stools. This will actually help fortify that. So the key takeaways are small breed, medium breed, 7 years of age, large breed, 6 years of age, and if you've got those really big ones, that's where I'd be starting to feed a diet from as a senior from 5 years of age.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Donna Smith, who is asking, is the Core Raw Rev for dogs, does it have freeze-dried? I feed raw, but I'm looking for something that I can feed on the go if necessary, and can it be mixed with raw?
Oh, great question, Donna. Yes, we do. So our Core Raw Rev is kibble, so it's the high protein grain-free kibble that you know and love from Core, so it promotes those great health benefits. But then what we've included, and we're one of the only few companies that do it, is we've put freeze-dried hunks of meat, so it's not with fillers, it's not something that's all combined together. It literally is visible meat where we put it on a big tray, we dice it up, we freeze-dry it, we bring it back out, and then we pour it in the bag. So it's as pure as that as you can get. So the other great thing is we also make sure it goes through a HPP processing. So if you're someone who's wanting to do feeding raw, this is one way of ensuring with a product like this that the bacteria that's often associated with raw doesn't flow through. So you get great quality meat, you get it freeze-dried, and you also get it completely safe. So that's one that I would always look at. Should you want to add in extra meat, they definitely don't need it. So these are going to have high protein to start with. It's one of our highest protein diets in our whole portfolio. But if you did want to top a little bit, then that's absolutely fine. My guidance here would always be choose lean meat. Make sure you're obviously keeping it small, and if you're adding things, as always, reduce the amount you're feeding, and then that way you're going to give them the best quality. But again, if you're looking for snacks, don't forget you can also add in things like carrots or apple, all chopped up as well, because they're great ways of adding in some raw that doesn't have to be meat, but it still delivers that same fresh taste.
Thank you. We have a question from Andrea. We're going to jump back to cats for a moment now.
Yep.
Wellness, do you have food to help cats with urinary problems? Or maybe talking a little bit more about urinary health?
Sure. So urinary health, we're seeing it more and more and more of late, especially with our cats coming indoors, especially with our cats getting larger. Often when they're larger, they're not as active. They tend to sit down or sleep a lot more, and they're just not eliminating their bladder as often as we would like. Now, there's all different ways for what causes cats to have urinary problems. It can be things from diet, it can be things from stress, it can be genetics, or it can be, and it's often the largest one, we just don't know why. You know, it's just something that happens in cats. So nutritionally, what you can do is a couple things. First of all, pick a great quality diet. By having high meat, but also having low magnesium and phosphorus and calcium and all these minerals, you're going to reduce the chances of it actually promoting a stone development, which is great. The second thing you want to do is you want to feed them smaller amounts or have them out grazing across the day. That actually works to actually keep the pH of their urine at a consistent level, so less likely again to cause any upsets. But the best thing, more than any other thing in the world, is feed wet. This is a great source of meaty nutrition, but wet food is also high in water. So when a cat has a tin of wet food or a pouch, whatever you choose to feed, you're also giving them about 80% of which is water. So it's a really great drink. And no different to if you or I drank 2 litres of water in our morning, before morning tea, what we then see is we're obviously then going to the bathroom. And that's the same with cats. They'll then go to the litter tray and they've had such a large volume of water in their bladder that it washes away all of those potential concentrated items, which then causes those urinary problems. So for most cats these days, vets are recommending even up to 50% of their daily intake be wet. If you've got a cat who's highly predisposed, that could almost go all the way up to 100. Just depends on what your vet recommends. But add some wet food and hopefully that'll help reduce the chances.
Are breeds, this is for dogs, are
Sure.
breed-specific recipes important, and what is considered a small breed dog?
Sure. So small breed dogs are, again, we have toy breeds, we have small breeds, but we're generally looking under that, again, I use my Australian metrics, so 10 kilos, which in pounds is what, 20 pounds and under? Carly, and yep, perfect. So these guys, you want to make sure that they are that smaller breed. Now, this is the ideal breed standards. So similarly, we don't want to have, say, a Maltese who is weighing 50 pounds or something horrendous, not quite that far, Danielle, but if we come back a little bit, we also want to work on what their breed standards are. So in that case, even if they were a little chunky, they're still a small breed. We just need to make sure we're getting them back to their healthy weight. What was the other part of that question?
So, and then talk a little bit more about breed-specific.
Yes, breed-specific.
recipes.
Correct. So we've often seen a lot of companies go out there saying, here's a diet for a boxer, here's a diet for a Rottweiler, here's one for a Labrador. So are they really and truly different? You know, I think we all know each breed has differences. So a great example is that our Tilly's joining in. They are different, aren't they, Tilly? They are different. So things like German Shepherds, or if we go some of our Huskies, these guys are really sensitive on digestive health. If we think about our Labradors, these guys, well, they could sniff food out from miles away. You know, they're very food orientated and may start to have some weight challenges. So there are individual nuances that these breed-specific diets actually try to focus on specifically. Do you need one? If you have a Labrador, therefore, do you need to find a Labrador diet? And here my answer is most definitely not. What you need to make sure is you always pick the highest quality. And again, if you've got a large breed dog, and we'll keep using this example of a Labrador, when you pick a diet like large breed core, it's going to have all the inclusions in there that would be for a Labrador formula. So we make sure that we've got lots of protein, but we also reduce the fat levels in our large breed diets because we know that's such an important one for those. We also know that there are large breeds, as I mentioned, like the Husky and the German Shepherds, who could get tummy upsets. So this way you're not just prioritising the weight benefits, but we're also going to give you the digestive health benefits, the joint health benefits. We're going to give you the omega fatty acids health benefits, so if they've got hot spots or any skin concerns. So for us, we make sure we look after all the breed needs when it comes to nutrition so that you don't have to specifically buy just one individual breed.
Thank you. So then moving back on to a question for cats.
Sure.
Are cats considered seniors along the same time frame as dogs, or is it different?
Yeah, so cats most definitely are the same as a small breed and a medium breed dog in regards to when they transition to a senior. So this is from 7 years of age, which is, when you think about it, most of our cats these days are living up to 20 years long. So almost 2/3 of their life is a senior. So here again, the big thing what we see is there's almost 2 stages of senior where a diet like a product like Core can really help. What you see first of all in the seniors that are maybe 7 to 12, 13, is they still look fantastic condition. You know, they're active. In some cases, actually, they might be starting to get a little too overweight. So you want to make sure that from that year of age, because they're not as mobile as they used to, you're reducing the amount of fat and calories they're getting. But what we see in the cats, and think about your older cats if you've ever had them, from 13 to 20, they often get really scrawny and they really start to lose some weight. So here the great thing is if you fed them a senior diet from earlier, so from 7, you've maintained that diet that's going to be really rich in protein, but also moderate on fat, so that when they get to 13 or plus, they're not going to have that really skinny look. You're going to help keep the muscle on them. So you're going to almost be doing preventative treatment so that when they get to those aged old, lovely retirees, they're going to be fed a diet that's making sure they've got the mobility and also the health and well-being. So 7 years of age is what I always say is a rule of thumb for cats.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
We have a question coming in, another question on cats from Nadia,
Sure.
who is asking how she can transition from doing free feeding to timed feedings. She's concerned that with the timed feedings, her cats will eat up the food right away and then still want more.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. When we actually have free feeding, and free feeding isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but the most important thing is you need to make sure that they're not overeating their allowance. So if you're putting food out for the day, make sure it's measured and that way they can have it and graze. Now, naturally, if you've got more than one cat in your household, that's when it can start to get a bit complex because they'll often share bowls and you don't know who's had what or where they're going. For time feeding, there's different ways you can do it. So first and foremost is you can put the food down. They have a set period of time. Should they not eat it, after a set period of time, doesn't matter, that food comes up. Now, you're going to get lots of meows. You're going to get them really keen and focusing. So here, you might want to be making sure that you're feeding them in the morning and then if you're off to work, and then you're feeding them at night. So you've done it in that sense. So it'll take cats a little while to get into it. Dogs are often much easier. They click onto these things faster. Alternates that you could do is you could get an automatic feeder. So if they're starting to do times where you want to feed them when you're not there, you could have automatic feeders. So there's other different options. There's even options now that can actually read the microchip so that the door will open for that cat. They can have their food, but if the other cat comes and he can't eat his fellow companion's food. So loads of options, stick with it. And again, if it's wet food especially, make sure that if they haven't eaten after that period, lift it up off the ground.
Another question, and this can apply to probably dogs and cats. How can I tell if my pet has a food allergy?
Yeah, so this is a good one. So food allergies is something that we see in our dogs and cats. I think it's often misdiagnosed because, often people will come in and say, I believe my dog's got this allergy or that allergy. If we look at the science, what we see is actually the number one cause for those itchy, scratchy pets is often fleas or parasites. The second one is sometimes allergies in the environment. And actually the third one for allergies is food. Now, we often think of them the other way around. That's a true allergy. Your immune system's involved. It's similar to people, but we see there are signs in dogs and cats as skin and coat upsets or digestive upsets. So they don't get the anaphylaxis, for example, responses that we do as humans. So how do you know if your cat's got one? The best thing you could do is actually go to your veterinarian. They've got a variety of tests which actually help you rule that down to the diagnosis and also make sure that there's not something else going on. If we're talking the reality of a skin and coat upset or a digestive upset, they could be caused by a whole different other variety of things as well. So it's really important to make sure that you've had your vet rule them out. If you're thinking you've got an allergy, this doesn't mean that you instantly need to be going and trying all these different foods. The big thing is you want to keep it to feeding them limited choices of ingredients. So maybe pick one of the new LID diets or pick something that isn't full of all artificial flavours, colours, all those nasties which can cause an upset, and just see if they improve. Often it might be an allergy from something else or a dietary intolerance or a sensitivity. And when you move on to a better quality food, it's a combination of things versus a true allergy. It's the fact they're going to have all these digestive health benefits or great omega fatty acids, which will actually make the dog feel better from an intolerance standpoint. So my recommendations is if your dog or cat are having a tummy upset or their coat's not looking the best that it can be, first and foremost, go on to a great quality protein. I feed my dog, for example, Core Ocean. It hasn't got chicken in it. It's rich in fatty acid oils. It's a limited protein. They're only fishes, and it is grain-free. So that's what I feed her. She has got some upsets and allergies to the environment. works a treat. If that doesn't work, then I'd almost be also saying, as I said, go to your veterinarian, see if there's something else going on, and they'll be able to recommend to you as well. All right, so thank you. I think we're wrapping up. My goodness, time flies when you're having fun. So thank you all for joining here today. It's been great talking to you and talking over all the different things. Tilly's still here. I know she's off screen many of the time. Hey, Tilly, Tilly, Tilly. She said, I hear there's treats, but I'm going back over there. So thank you for joining. We love coming in here and talking to you about pet food. It's always they say never work with dogs or animals or babies, don't they? But thank you for joining. Share the video. If you haven't seen it or you weren't able to join today, make sure you share it with your family and friends. We will most definitely be asking you lots more, or should I say, if you ask a question on the website, we'll make sure we answer them all for you. So should you have not been able to get on the session today, we will make sure that we get to your question after this session and we'll get it all out there, and you still have the chance to go into our wellness pet food draw so that you can actually win some of these great products for either your dog or your cat, and the winners will be chosen today. So I keep all my fingers and toes crossed for you, and I look forward to joining you on the very next Wellness Facebook Live session. Thank you.